your host, Gary Baumgarten. And today we're pleased to have a friend of the show, best-selling author Steve Emerson. Steve heads the investigative project on terrorism. He has uncovered terrorist cells in the United States. He is joining us to talk about the Holy Land Fund for Relief and Development case in Dallas. And I'm sure he has much to say about Mr. Ahmadinejad's speech today here in New York City at Columbia. Five men are accused of running the nation's largest terrorist financing front in the case that we asked Steve to come and join us to talk about. The men, who are officers and employees at the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, are charged with conspiring and providing material support to Hamas through their charitable donations. Prosecutors say HLF funneled more than $12 million to Hamas, mostly through a network of social welfare charities in the West Bank and Gaza. A fatwa has been placed on Emerson's head because his investigative reporting has uncovered organizations and mosques in the United States that are fronting for terrorist groups. Steve Emerson, welcome once again to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Nice to be with you.
It's nice to have you, and I understand that you are under the weather, and I was told if it were not for this show, you wouldn't be doing any appearances today. So we appreciate you joining us. A lot of people probably feel that they were duped because they were kind-hearted individuals, and they reached in their pocket and they paid to try to help impoverished children and adults, people who have been toiling and trying to live under a situation of a third world environment in the Palestinian territories, only to find out, as the government at least alleges, that that money, up to $12 million that they and others contributed to the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, went, according to the case that was presented and remains before the jury, to fund terrorism in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. You, I presume, not to put words in your mouth, can't be particularly surprised that this is what the government investigation revealed.
No, I'm not surprised, and I think just as importantly, if you look at some of the videos that were released by the government that were sponsored by the Hamas infrastructure in the United States that raised money for Holy Land Foundation, you would see that people were yelling for killing Jews. And so, therefore, some of the donors, I can't tell you what percentage, knew that the money was going for terrorist purposes. Other donors, as you correctly point out, thought it was for benevolent activities. Nevertheless, the government charged the organization with funneling $12 million to Hamas, and as you correctly pointed out, also the verdict is now being adjudicated by the jury. We should have a verdict in any day. It could be a week, could be 5 days. I don't know. I'm not surprised about the disingenuousness of the charity. I mean, since 9/11, there have been at least a dozen Islamic charities and front groups shut down by the government as being fronts for terrorism. And I think that's the way they operated in the United States for more than a decade, under the grand deception notion.
And the reason, for the benefit of those who are not familiar with your work, Steve Emerson, I suggested that it comes as no surprise to you, is because you've made it your life's work to investigate the use of organizations, whether they are charitable organizations or religious institutions such as mosques, to front for terrorist activity right here in the United States of America.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I've been doing this work now for 12 years, 13 years, and we actually have a website that I'll plug, which is the investigativeproject.org, that actually has a lot of the findings of our publicly released investigations, plus actual raw video and audio of the Islamic groups in terms of what they said behind closed doors. And that is what we've been uncovering since the creation of the organization in '95, to basically uncover the hidden links between supposedly, quote, moderate groups and their organizational ties to terrorists. Now, I must tell you that there are genuinely moderate Islamic leaders that we support and try to acquire a venue for, and they are really the heroes because they have helped us out these other organizations. Unfortunately, the vast amount of monies that are raised in the Islamic world go to support the radicals.
And I presume the reason they want you to out them is that they can't because they fear some kind of retribution.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. They fear retribution, and they although some of them have actually courageously come out and stated who they are, like Zudi Jasser or Sheikh Hisham Kabani or others. They've been phenomenally courageous, I must tell you. I mean, and there are others in the Middle East who've come out, even in Saudi Arabia, intellectuals coming out against the radicals. They don't have grand followings, but they are very brave. There's even a woman dissident who's a secularist in Saudi Arabia who lives under threat, who's come out. So there is some diversity of opinion, not a lot, because of the fears of retaliation and retribution.
Steve Emerson, I would say that my biggest fear for the moderate Muslims that are assisting you and moderate Muslims who aren't getting involved, frankly, is that because so many of these terrorists front as moderates, it causes people to have a backlash against all Muslims, an unfortunate but almost understandable backlash against all Muslims because heck, how are you supposed to know when what appears to be what fronts as a religious institution, a mosque, which is essentially a Muslim church, really is a hotbed of terrorist activities? All you need is a handful of them. That taints one's perceptions of all of the mosques in the nation. So this must be a difficult time for the moderate Muslims indeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what you're saying, a little bit more. It's the refusal by, look, only a small number are actual terrorists, but you have, though, are people who are what I call cultural jihadists. They don't, pull the trigger. They just applaud the people that pull the trigger. They don't pull the pin on a hand grenade. They just applaud them. And that's unfortunately composed of much of the, quote, hierarchical leadership of the Islamic world today, which is radiated from the Muslim Brotherhood to the Salafists and the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. So you basically don't have genuine condemnations of terrorism. You have Islamic leaders, I call them ersatz moderates, who say we condemn terrorism, but then they don't define blowing up a bus in Israel as terrorism, or they don't define killing American soldiers as terrorism. And I think therein lies the whole problem of the backlash. The Islamic leaders contend that it's Islamophobia that causes terrorism. They got it mixed up. It's terrorism that causes the backlash against Islamic organizations and the community. And while you can't blame all Muslims for terrorism, certainly you can blame the leadership of these groups for being basically pawns of radical Islam and being disingenuous. The American public does not associate Christianity and Judaism with terrorism as much as it associates Islam. Now, Islam itself as a religion doesn't inherently support terrorism any more than any other religion. It's the individuals who interpret it that support it, and those are the Islamic leaders out there that do. And they cause the public to be basically suspicious of all Muslim institutions. And if more Muslim leaders got up and genuinely condemned terrorism, you'd have a revolution and revolutionary change in public opinion.
Our guest is Steve Emerson. He is the head of the investigative project on terrorism. He has gone undercover, has reported in his books and on his